Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to actually go there. So we are basically structured of energy, which is harmonically attuned uniquely to each of us. No two of us are energetically alike or harmonically alike. Okay? In connection with that is our DNA. Our DNA is also harmonically wired. It is a communicative entity that lives within us that shows who we are, what we are, and that kind of thing. A few years ago, DNA looks kind of like a twisted ladder. It's made of segments, and it just kind of it's like if you just took a ladder and kind of just twisted it a little bit. That's how DNA looks, and the segments are all different colors. They're actually very beautiful. It used to be in previous generations that in the DNA strand, communication would go up one leg of the ladder, one segment at a time, kind of like a little electrical wire, okay? Like the current would just travel and communicate. Well, then what started happening about 8 years ago was that the communication along the DNA ladder started to change. It started to arc and skip sections and actually communicate with sections that weren't yet working, weren't awake yet, or had gone to sleep for millennia. And those sections are waking up. As all of this occurs, and now, just in the last couple of years, the communications are literally hopping across the ladder to the other leg and communicating that way. So what we're getting is the DNA also has a little energy field that's emitted from it, just like we have a light field that our aura reflects off of. Well, DNA has a similar thing. And as these communications have changed, the little fields around the DNA strands have expanded. And as that happens, we have access to higher awareness, greater aspects of consciousness. The children are being born with this. With us, we've kind of struggled as we've fired and misfired and trying to figure out who we are and what the heck we're here for. Well, they're coming in with clear instructions from their DNA. And as the DNA has changed, the consciousness of the kids has risen, which is why we've seen a progression where we started with the indigos, then we had a bit of a hesitation during the transitional time, and then it refined beautifully into the crystallines, which are coming in. And then a few years from now, we're going to have another set of kids that are going to be clean white energy, and they're going to be another phenomenon. Hang on to your hat, you know. But all this is an evolution of consciousness and our ability to keep up with it.
Okay. Forgive this next question because it seems kind of stupid, but you said communicate. Communicate with what?
Which which part of communication do you mean did I talk about?
The DNA, you say it's communicate.
Thanks. Okay. Our DNA contains all of the instructions of who we are, where we've been, where we're going, what we look like, everything, okay?
Okay.
It also is directly relative to consciousness. Well, our body is signaling to our DNA constantly by chemicals and little subtle electrical fields what's going on at every given moment, what we're experiencing, and what our bodies need, all of that. It's our little instruction manual, okay? As we have these experiences, that communication goes into the DNA, and the DNA responds by telling our bodies, ourselves, to react in certain ways.
Okay.
It's basically our operation station, okay? So the way that our DNA is receiving those communications now has changed. Does that help?
Yeah. Okay. Now, let's cover this kind of quickly. ADD, ADHD, a lot of these kids have been diagnosed with this, and frankly, I mean, I never heard about this kind of stuff when I was a kid, even though I felt a lot of it. So sometimes I suspect what the fact that these things came about, but I'm also assuming that the medical establishment didn't know what was going on with these kids, right?
Well, this is one of my pet peeve subjects, so I'm glad you brought it up. Here's the deal. These kids, these new kids, don't think like we did, okay, or like we do. We think most of us, in a linear format, A plus B equals C, okay? Mm-hmm. These kids are, because of the nature of their wiring, for lack of better words, are able to think holographically, which you can also call compartmentally. They absorb information with all of their senses and with their bodies and their energy fields. They're very sentient, unlike us who are kind of dull and have to use our brains, okay? And so because of that, first of all, and that high sensitivity, it's very hard for them to be still because they're feeling everything and everyone around them. Secondly, their awareness is such that it doesn't have to focus in a straight line. It picks up little pieces of information, files them away, and then as they need it, they can draw it out as a whole picture. Okay? They put all the fragments together in their awareness, and they pull back a whole idea or concept or whatever. So it's a whole different way that they think. Because of that, for them to sit in a classroom and have somebody teach them by rote is maddening for these kids. Also, like I said, they're feeling everyone else in the room. So if other people in the room, whether it's a teacher or their classmates or mates or whatever, are not balanced, if they're being difficult, if somebody's angry, if somebody else is disturbing things or whatever, these kids feel it 1,000 times greater than we do. So they can't sit still with it, and they need to move around a lot. Plus, they don't feed kids right at school. They just don't. And so what happens is the children start being diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and even a lot of them are being called bipolar, that kind of thing. And what has come down as a result of that is that the schools are requesting and even requiring the children be medicated, or they're threatening to expel the children. The doctors and the schools reap financial benefits for getting these drugs to these kids. So everybody wants the kids on drugs, okay? Mm-hmm. But here's what happens. The drugs dull the kids. It dulls their giftedness, and it helps them to sit still in some cases. In some cases, it works just the opposite on them. But what happens is they're not helping anything, and they're not dealing with what's really going on. They're just destroying the natural beauty of these children. Mm-hmm. And the children feel terrible on these drugs. They beg not to take them. And, so what I say to parents out there, if your kid is one of these, don't let anybody bully you. It's your child. Let your child be who they are. Teach them parameters, teach them boundaries, what's polite, what's not, how to act, when and where, and, they'll be okay. But this is nonsense. All these kids on drugs is just, it's a travesty.
Yeah, this almost reminds me of the biblical story when Jesus was born and it was decreed to kill all the male children, because it seems like a part of me is looking at this and going, establishment is threatened by all of this. Exactly.
We do not socially know what to do with something that is different. And here we have a whole new generation that is different. And society is literally killing some of these kids. I can't tell you how many of the transitionals have killed themselves. Yeah. How many families I have personally worked with, and and that is not something I ask for. It's just something that finds me because it's part of the phenomenon. And sure. I'm so very, very sad that these kind of things happen, and it's just out of sheer darn ignorance, Mm-hmm. And the fact that people are not open to new and different.
Yeah. Okay, so. Let's move on to something that we can all fly with. Let's talk about those orbs. What's going on with those anyway?
Well, they're projections of consciousness. Like I said, that's how there was one type of children that I haven't mentioned, and it has to do with the orbs, And they're the ones that I call the beautiful silent ones. There is a specific group of children. They're in their kind of early mid-teens right now that maybe were born normal, quote, or maybe were born with certain issues physically. But all of these particular kids don't speak. Many of them are physically disabled to some degree or another. And so they're not like everybody else, but they have the most refined abilities of telepathy I have ever seen anywhere. And they are the ones that contacted me in the form of orbs to start with. It was 4 of these particular children that connected with my energy field to get my attention. They actually make things happen. It's bizarre what they do. That's how I ended up with Good Morning America. Helping them was one of the kids telepathically, energetically, whatever the heck he does. I'm not real sure all the time. But he was the one that instigated that whole thing and several other things since then. He's just amazing. That's Weston. And I have his newsletters on my website, Weston's Words, I called it. But anyway, orbs are projections of consciousness.
Okay, so sorry for interrupting. Are these the same orbs that we hear about, when we're talking about ghosts and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, here's the deal. Consciousness in its truest form is spherical in nature and is nothing but light frequencies. It moves faster than the speed of light. It crosses all veils of reality, dimensionally, time, space,